After 26 episodes analyzing Life is Strange, I think it's time to talk about the gameplay. Most of the gameplay in Life is Strange is pretty basic, but there is one incredible innovation that I think needs its own episode and should be put in a lot more games, and that is, of course, the Rubik's clues. So we're going to talk in detail about all of the marvelous potential that this particular kind of gameplay holds. But first we've got to talk about Phoenix Wright. This is a legendary series of visual novels, and you should definitely play them if you haven't, but bring a walkthrough, because the gameplay is awful. So the problem is that each game is very, very linear, and at any given time you're just trying to trigger the next plot point. That means that you spend a lot of your time pixel hunting or desperately presenting every single thing in your inventory to every single person on the planet, just trying to get the next piece of the sequence to start. If that wasn't bad enough, it's made truly awful by the fact that this is an investigative game. Often you'll solve the mystery, you'll figure out what's going on, at least part of it, and you will want to pursue that. You'll want to be like, hey judge, stop. I know what happened, and this bloody handprint proves it. But you can't, because the game has another sequence in mind. And instead you've got to talk about, teapots or whatever else the game has leading up to that. And you can't even remember that stuff because it's all irrelevant compared to actually solving the mystery. Sometimes it goes the opposite direction and the clues aren't really enough to figure out the plot twist, and the plot twist comes out of nowhere and you're just left randomly presenting stuff again. Either way, there is a solution, and that is the Rubik's clues. So let's talk about them. Basically, the idea here is that you take a linear game and you break it up into a bunch of parallel sequences. There's a little bit more complexity to it than that, but let's talk about it in how it runs in Life is Strange and how it could run in other games. So, each of our main puzzles, Frank, David, and Nathan, get tacked up here on the board. Now, this was a linear game, and we did collect each of these pieces of information as we moved through the game, but we could have also done this in an open world situation. There's nothing preventing us from having come up here and seen, Frank's clues. Let's investigate. This is the Frank puzzle, but I've only got 2 things here, and obviously I need more. And Max would be able to vocalize that. She'd be like, I don't think we have enough to pin Frank down. Maybe we need to go and steal something from him. So, by splitting up the puzzles in this way, you allow the player to quickly figure out what puzzles they are behind on, I put in air quotes there that you couldn't see, and what puzzles they're doing well on. If they've got all of David's clues, they know that they might need to go and investigate some more stuff for Frank. And if they're stuck on Frank, the game knows it, because the game knows how many clues they've gathered for Frank. And the game also knows when they're interested in Frank, because they're going to look at Frank's clues. So you're not going to pop in. They're not going to be like, we're investigating David's computer, and now it's giving us advice to go see Frank? That's kind of random. You're not going to have that problem. Instead, it's going to give you advice about what to do when you go see Frank when you look at Frank's clues. That's only useful if there's some kind of ability to travel through the world under your own power and visit Frank whenever you want. In a very linear game, you're going to have to gather those clues in a linear order. But you could still have some kind of freedom there. In addition, there's never going to be a game where you can just asynchronously gather any clue you want. There's always going to be some clues that happen first. There's always going to be some situations where you have to gather a specific clue at a specific time because a specific character will be there at that moment. You can't really just completely ditch all of that, but it does give you a lot more freedom to allow the player to uncover these clues as they want. And it gives you a lot more freedom to understand which clues the player wants to look for next, and how they should proceed getting them. Now let's talk about the fact that each of these puzzles is now a distinct puzzle. You've got specific pieces of information that relate only to this puzzle, and you are asked to figure something out. Unlike in Phoenix Wright, where you have a specific set of information that is just global, and then you wait for someone to accidentally say something that contradicts, you're not doing that. Instead of a trigger-based situation, you're in an information-based situation, and you're actively trying to put pieces together in a literal sense. You're trying to figure out, I need to know what's in Frank's account book and what will help me figure that out. Well, the answer, of course, is the account book. And his notes on what dogs are which people.
Yes, the game is on. Now, talk to us.
Now, there was no chance of us thinking, well, David has something to do with this, or I really want to talk about Nathan's phone. If we did want to talk about Nathan or David, we would have gone to their puzzle. We focused in on Frank's puzzle, and therefore we aren't going to be distracted by our breakthroughs or confusion about other puzzles. It's a great way to focus the player down. Also notice that we have turned one clue into many clues. We never had any reason to read the interior of Frank's book before. We glanced in it and saw that there were no real names, so we just kind of put it aside until we could figure out what's up. Now we have a crib sheet, and we can now look and see exactly what's up, and we can ask the player to actually do that. Player, actually investigate. Player, please do this stuff. Read these sheets. Figure out which of these sheets is the one you want. And then, once that's done, we even rip up the sheets and we put individual lines over here on the final board. So in this manner, we can take generic clues and turn them into very specific clues. As you proceed deeper into each of these puzzles, the clues change shape and become more meaningful, and you can pull more clue out of them. You pull more out of them and figure out more details. I think this is great. I like the idea of trying to solve the mystery, rather than the idea of just waiting for someone to say something that conflicts with what's in your pockets. It also means that you can make the mysteries a lot more meaty. Most games are scared to actually put a lot of text up because the player is not going to want to read a novel while they are working on it. If Phoenix Wright gave you a batch of pictures, it would either be a single picture or it would just be labeled a batch of pictures, and you'd never get to see each individual picture. Because the individual pictures are never going to matter in a Phoenix Wright environment. Just the fact that they do exist matters. One specific picture might matter, but you never get like a sheaf of them. In this game, you have several sheafs of pictures, and you end up pulling them apart and packing them up one by one and looking at each individually. And it's not overwhelming because you don't do that until you have context as to why those pictures would matter. I also like the fact that you can recombine these puzzles later on. So as you evolve each of these puzzles, you can form it into a more refined state and then eventually combine it with another evolved puzzle and figure out what's going on. That recombination is super nice and very rewarding when you do figure out which of these particular entries applies to your particular situation, and then figure out which particular location and figure out which particular car. All of that stuff merges together and creates a solution, and that's very, very powerful, and it makes me feel like I actually investigated something and I actually figured something out, rather than me just picking up random clues and hoping for the best.
Where are we?
Now, I've talked about this a lot in terms of taking a linear game and breaking it up into parallel games, but so far I've been talking specifically about investigation, about trying to figure out exactly what to do. There's no reason it has to be limited to this sort of, crime drama, though. Any linear game can be broken up into a set of parallel sequences, a set of parallel puzzles. Let's say that you're playing a visual novel where you're trying to defend your city against an evil emperor that's going to invade. In a standard linear visual novel, you might go through and meet all the various people that are going to help you defend the city and figure out various ways to get the city's defenses online, or sabotage the enemy general, or whatever, call for reinforcements. But it's all set up in a way where you just move through it piece by piece. A more aggressive VN might be, you've got to succeed at this thing or fail at this thing, and you've got to really do some time management and stuff. But it's still a very loose situation where you're just picking up pieces and choosing A or B, A or B, A or B. This approach is much more valid for that sort of thing. Let's say At the end of the game, the evil demons attack and they smash against the bulwarks that you have created. Well, your bulwarks are these puzzles, or are built when you finish these puzzles. Let's say that one of your defenses is going to be an uber-powerful old mage who can defend your city with a massive incantation. And it's not going to be enough to save the city on its own, but it'll be great. The problem is that the guy has retired. There's something seriously sad going on, and he does not want to ever use magic again. Well, you can go into that as if it were a mystery, and you could gather these elements in the exact same way, except for instead of trying to figure out, what crime happened, you're trying to figure out how to convince this mage that defending the city is really what really a good thing. Maybe he's misunderstood something, or maybe it's time to get over the past, or whatever else needs to happen. But you can use this to drive a character arc as well. But that's not the only way to do it either. It doesn't even have to be mysteries. For example, let's say that you want to build an elite guard force, and you have to choose which guards will head up the various divisions of guards. And you've got like 12 guards that have names and faces, and you've talked to them all. Well, those 12 guards could be the clues on this board, and you select the 3 that you think should lead the divisions. And then they go on to the next puzzle, and each of those 3 gives you their 3 or 4 suggestions on what they can do to make the guards better, and you pick like 4 of those. And then on the final board, you can combine that with the mage's defensive magic now that that's been created, and you can have these super guards with shields. So it doesn't have to be mysteries. I happen to think it serves mysteries very, very well, but any linear game can be made massively parallel. You can take those sequences and turn them into individual sequences. The player can pursue those as they see fit, and maybe the player only finds 4 of the named guards and then decides that's enough and doesn't try and track down the other 8. Maybe 10 of the guards are easy to find and there's 2 secret guards. Or maybe some of those guards have their own puzzle sequences, and you can either choose them to head up the guards, or you can choose them along their own sequences and have them do other things. There's a lot of potential here for how to arrange it, and it's very, very easy to arrange things in this manner. Once you've figured out that this is how you can do it, just, a cluster of n things and pick a few of them, and then they become a cluster of n things and pick a few of them, and then they combine with something else, and you pick a few of those. Once you've figured out that that's how your data can be represented, that's how your puzzles can be represented, that's how your sequences can be represented, that's how your plot arcs can be represented. Once you figure that out, it's very easy to build your game around that theme, and it really makes me want to do it. There are so many places where this very, very simple approach could radically improve the gameplay of a tremendous number of games. Anyway, that's me waxing philosophical about the one truly innovative gameplay element in Life is Strange. That said, I think that the rewinding powers bit and the jumping through photographs bit, those were narratively awesome. They just weren't gameplay awesome. They were pretty basic in terms of gameplay. Well, if you did understand or didn't understand what I was talking about, please let me know. If I didn't get through with this video, I'll try again, I guess, but I honestly think that this is a series, the Rubik's Clues, I think that this is an approach that would really, really do well.